How you doing?
Good to see you. You on the go, as you always are, I know. But
I still got this day job, so right. I was running a little bit late this morning, but I got here on time. I got here on time.
I thought of you this morning. I read a news story. This is a National Associated Press story. Headline: Injured passenger awarded $300,000 after Miami federal jury finds Carnival Cruises overserved her alcohol. And the bottom line: this woman says she did at least 14 shots of tequila over about a 8 to 10 hour period, and then she passed out, fell, hit her head, concussed, all kinds of problems now. So she sued the cruise lines for over-serving her, and the jury sided with her and awarded her $300,000. What are any thoughts on that?
It's called dram shop liability, and in Pennsylvania, if you are a liquor licensee and you serve a patron who is visibly intoxicated, then you are responsible for injuries that occur either to that patron or to somebody else. I've had some at LGKG. I don't know if there's another law firm that's handled more liquor liability cases than we have. There's been some horrific injuries. The last one I think I had in Beaver County. You talk about unfortunate. This poor woman's riding her bike, and a guy had been served at a local tavern, gets in his truck, leaves the parking lot and proceeds to just run her over. In those cases, you have to be able to prove that the patron was visibly intoxicated at the time of service. And normally we start with the policeman, right? The policeman comes to the scene. And policemen, they're trained in being able to identify a driver that's intoxicated. So the questioning normally goes like this. Officer Smith, when you arrived at the scene, was there a strong odor of alcohol? Yes, there was. What else did you observe? Well, he was slurring his speech, had a hard time standing up. His eyes were glassy. Did you conduct a field sobriety test? Yeah, we did. And was he able to pass? No. Officer Smith, based upon all of your training and experience, how long did it take you to determine that this driver was visibly intoxicated? Less than 10 seconds, I knew he was drunk. And then the next question is the question that's the linchpin. Well, Officer Smith, I want you to assume that you were the bartender at Joe's Bar and Grill an hour ago. Viewing and observing what you just observed, would you have served this patron alcohol? No way. He was obviously drunk. That's where we start the case. And then, of course, we want to also there's video everywhere, Scott. There was video of me walking in this building, I'm sure, today, and we get the video. And in that case, we got the video, and, we counted, I believe, 11 or 12 drinks. This patron was served within an hour and a half. So if you can prove that the tavern served the patron while they were visibly intoxicated, then in that event, the tavern is responsible for the injuries that patron causes. So at LGKG, yes, we've handled many of those cases. Now, it's a better case when the patron doesn't get drunk and go out and hurt himself, because somebody will look at him and say, well, listen, he went out and wrecked his car. Well, he got to share responsibility in this too. He had 11 drinks in an hour. But there is liability in cases like that, And what gets me, you own a car, right, Scott?
Yes.
You got to buy insurance?
A lot of it expensive.
Yeah, and why do you got to buy insurance? Because the law tells you cannot drive a motor vehicle in Pennsylvania without having it insured. Well, guess what? If you own a tavern in Pennsylvania and you're selling food and alcoholic beverages and making a profit, there is no law in Pennsylvania that requires the tavern owner to have liquor liability insurance. It's a big hole in our legal system.
Wow.
They're not required to do it, and some people don't. And, you're taking a chance if you do that. You may lose your bar if a patron goes out there and hurts somebody really bad, but you're not required to do it. And that kind of always got to me because you drive a car, you got to have insurance. Well, how about if you own a tavern, you're making money, earning profit, you're not required to have insurance. And that's a hole in the system.
More and more I see bars that have a piece of paper hanging up saying we will not serve someone visibly intoxicated. So they're saying that out loud, but...
Well, it doesn't mean they don't do it. That doesn't mean that they don't do it. In fact, in the case that we had that I was telling you about, there was a new bartender. She was like in her second day of working, and she told the older bartender, I'm a little worried about Mr. Smith over here. That's okay. He's all right. And they kept serving him. Yeah. So in those cases, bad things can happen. And in this case, a bad thing happened to a poor woman who was just riding her bike. Yeah. And I mean, that's not the only. We've had several of these through the years, whereby a lot of times, what we'll find is guys bar hop. They're at one bar and, was he visibly intoxicated? Oh, no, he was fine. He goes to another bar. Was he visibly intoxicated? Oh, no, he was fine. Then he goes to the third bar and he walks in and the bartender says, I'm not serving you. You're obviously drunk. And he had just left bar number 2 10 minutes ago and was served alcohol. So there's a lot of different ways you can prove visibly intoxication. And at LGKG, man, I quit counting how many liquor liability cases we've had through the years. But, yeah, in those cases, there's liability, as there should be.
We're joined by Larry Kelly of the Luxembourg, Garber, Kelly & George law firm. History, trust, and results. As you mentioned on your website, we've recovered over $200 million for our clients.
Yeah, we've had, in the last 20 years, we counted our clients. We've had 10,000 clients in the last 20 years trust us with their cases. There must be a reason why. And this is a small town, Scott. This isn't New York City. It isn't even Pittsburgh. People know us. If you're good, the reputation within the community is these guys do what they say they're going to do. But if you're bad, that reputation goes out there too. As I say all the time, we have now law firms coming into our community from West Virginia and New York and Florida. Nobody knows these people. You don't have a clue who they are
I'm
or
driving
what
on the
they're
road,
all about.
I see billboards, like you said, people, who's that guy? And I notice they won't give an address, or I won't see a 412 or 724 area code.
Right. If he doesn't show up in your grocery store or drink beers at your local tavern, you shouldn't hire that person. That's just me. I like to deal with people who I know, who the community knows, who are accountable. If they don't do what they say they're going to do, that's who I hire. And if you're hiring a lawyer, that's who you should hire too. LGKG, all the lawyers that work at our law firm are Western Pennsylvania people. My daughters grew up in Beaver County. I grew up in Lawrence County, but for the last 30 years have lived in Beaver County. So, when people see me walking down the street, they know my face, and if I don't do what I say I'm going to do, I'm going to hear it from them, as I should. But if I do say and do what I say I'm going to do, then I'm going to hear from them, and it'll be with a smile on their face. At LGKG, that's who we are.
Free consultations, no fees unless you win. The phone number is 724-658-8535. Website lgkg.com. And it's that time of year now. I'm starting to see construction season. PennDOT. I was coming home from the Parkway the other day, one lane, part of in the Robinson Township area. I'm a guy, I always got to look at my rearview mirror because it seems like so often I'm almost rear-ended. Where suddenly you're in the construction zone, and the girl behind you is flying at you. I'm just waiting I'm worried about that day.
We had a very serious case. It's still going on. Woman is in a construction zone, stopped on the turnpike with her four-way flashers on, and a tractor trailer hit her from behind at 50 miles an hour. The obvious result occurred. She died. Car exploded, started on fire. Yeah, when you're in a construction zone, you have to be alert. And I tell my kids, put your four-way flashers on. Make sure you're parked far enough away from the car in front of you that if you see something coming, at least you have a chance to get out of the way. This is the second case we've had like this at LGKG. A dear buddy of mine going to a minor league baseball game in Ohio, stopped in a construction zone, hit from behind by a tractor trailer, and died. So, it happens. Be aware. Be vigilant. You should always know what's going on behind you. And then, of course, in a construction zone, we've at LGKG had a case. The woman ran over the flagman.
Oh, wow.
She ran, and there are certain rules and regulations that require proper signage, and not just 50 feet from where the flagmen are standing, but a mile and a half back, where they will alert you there's a construction zone ahead. They will alert you that there's flagmen ahead. And you have a duty and an obligation to make sure that you're attentive and don't, strike this person. This woman ran him right over, and we ended up trying that case in Washington County, and, it was a 6-figure verdict for him, and he deserved every penny of it. So there are special considerations in a construction zone, both for you as a driver and you who might be sitting in a line of traffic. Mm-hmm. Be aware. Always be aware, Scott. Bad stuff can happen in a construction zone.
Are there laws and rules for how it's marked by PennDOT? In this case, coming home yesterday, I was impressed. There were signs, construction 2 miles, construction 1 mile. I saw it coming, but I've been in other situations. Last year on the Parkway East, I remember, I didn't know it was a construction zone until you're like almost on top of it, and people were already going 65. And so are there some stipulations?
There are rules and regulations on how it should be signed. Absolutely. PennDOT, they have manuals for everything, and one of them talks about signage in a construction zone. So, a lot of times the signage might not be PennDOT who is responsible for it also. Sometimes they hire third-party contractors to go out there and do the work and sign the road. So, you have to be alert to that, who actually signed it, what did they or did they not do. The PennDOT people are pretty good at signing the road, though, because they're protecting themselves. The last thing you want is somebody approaching a construction zone at maybe 70 miles an hour and not realizing that they're in a construction zone until they're right on top of it. So the PennDOT people are normally pretty good in that regard.
Now, as a personal injury lawyer, what's going through your head about next weekend, Pittsburgh, anywhere from 300,000 to 500,000 people in an area?
Well, I guess I read somewhere that if you want to park your car for the weekend downtown, it's going to cost you $500.
I've heard that too.
That's ridiculous. Yeah, I'm going to watch it on TV. There's going to be traffic. There's going to be roads that are closed because of the traffic and the pedestrian traffic. If you're driving down there, be aware of pedestrian traffic. You have an absolute duty in a crosswalk to yield to a pedestrian. And at LGKG, we've had those cases too. We had a horrific case up in Venango County where a poor girl was crossing a crosswalk. Guy hit her, drug her 50 feet under his car before he stopped. What's that tell me? That tells me he's not paying attention.
And going fast.
If somebody walks in front of you in a crane, this wasn't a dart out. She was 3/4 of the way through the crosswalk. Even if you see her late, the moment you see her, you're going to slam on your brakes unless you're not paying attention. He might have been on his cell phone. You just don't know, So be vigilant when you're driving your car. And as a pedestrian, be vigilant. Make sure that you are crossing in a crosswalk. And even though you're crossing in a crosswalk and you have the absolute right of way, make sure you look both ways, because some people, especially with cell phones, which it's an absolute violation of the law to not be using a cell phone hands-free in our state today, sometimes they don't listen. And so be aware.
Now, I've wondered that as a driver. I've also had people jaywalk in front of me, and that worries me. What is my responsibility?
Well, you still have a responsibility to bring your car to a stop if you see them. Now, in a pedestrian case where you are let off the hook is if it's a dart-out case. They don't cross in a crosswalk. They enter the street between two parked cars, and they're not looking, and they're going walking way faster than they should. That's called a dart-out case. As a driver, you may not have had an opportunity to avoid that collision. So, you got a duty to keep your eyes open, but in a dart-out case, you may not have had an opportunity to get your car stopped.
Always amazes me when I'm in New York City, those cab drivers, there's this understanding. They are going with a green light. They don't care. They're just trusting you're not going to walk in front of them because they're not touching the brakes.
It's amazing. Yeah, I've walked in New York City. Yeah, that's a different world. That world is different than the one we live here in Beaver County and in Pittsburgh. You can get run over by anybody in New York.
They're not stopping.
You can get run over by a horse and buggy. Yeah. You can get run over by a cab, a bus, a guy on a bike, or a young kid on one of those motorized scooters. You can get run over anywhere in New York and by anything.
Talking Larry Kelly, LGKG, with law firms in Allegheny County, Butler County, and Lawrence County, including Beaver Falls right here in Beaver County. What else you been working on? Any other cases? Last week you ran off to Cranberry. I remember you had a case to take care of.
Yeah, we did. We're a personal injury firm that handles, of course, automobile accidents, workers' comp cases as a personal injury where you're injured at work. Unfortunately, we handle too many medical malpractice cases because 250,000 people a year die as a result of medical errors. We lost 50,000 young men in Vietnam, and the public was aghast. Well, we're losing 250,000 a year because of avoidable medical errors. And at LGKG, we've I don't know that there's a firm in Lawrence County or Beaver County that's handled more medical malpractice cases than we have. That's one of our areas of expertise. We handle Social Security cases. We have people that have worked their whole life, and as a result of either an injury or maybe just poor health can't work anymore. And, we work hard in getting them their Social Security disability benefits, which entitles you to your full Social Security amount even before you reach full retirement age if you're injured. So, and then, hey, Scott, I say this all the time. If you're injured in an automobile accident, a fall down or at work, you got a choice. You can call one of those big box firms, those firms from out of state or those firms that handle 1,000 cases, or you can call LGKG, where we handpick our clients. We're not a big box firm. We don't handle 1,000 cases. Why? You can't pay attention to 1,000 cases if you're handling them. If we take your case, we make one promise. We're going to give you the attention, in your case, the attention it deserves. Why? Because we can. Because we're not a big box firm. That's not what we do. We don't have our sign on every building and baseball field in Western Pennsylvania. Most of the people that come to us are people that we've worked for in the past. We've worked on their case, either them or their aunt or their uncle or their grandmother or a brother or a sister. We get those calls all the time at LGKG, and we handpick our cases. We don't handle 1,000 at a time. We're not a big box firm, so we can give your case the attention it deserves. There's the difference, Scott, between LGKG and some of these big box firms that you see advertising every 5 minutes.
You've also got a home field advantage. If I'm dealing from a lawyer whose office is in Florida, he doesn't know how to get a hold of the people. He needs to get a hold of the back doors to get the person who's got the police surveillance video and that kind of thing.
It's amazing. Yeah, I can tell you story after story about how I needed a medical record, and the medical records clerk at the hospital was a former client of mine, or how I needed a policeman to come and testify in a case, and it just so happened that I represented him in a workers' comp case a few years ago. And you got to know Western Pennsylvania. You got to know what makes us tick. This is a different, I love Western PA, Beaver County, Lawrence County. We're different. Allegheny County, we're a different breed of cat. Honest, in a good way. Yeah. In a good way. You can't BS these people here. You understand? They can smell BS a mile away and see it 2 miles away. You got to give it to them straight. We like to believe because we grew up here, we know what makes people tick in this community. And we have credibility. I've been practicing law 42 years. In Beaver County, I grew up with these judges that now sit, who were once lawyers, worked on cases with some of these people. And so they're not always going to rule in my favor. That's not what I'm suggesting. But if I say, Judge, this is the law as I see it, I have credibility with them because they've known me for 40 years. There's something to be said about that. I'm not going to give them BS. I wouldn't do that, and they wouldn't expect me to do that. So, that works in our favor also. There's a lot of things that I think make it important that if you're a Beaver County person, you hire a Beaver County attorney to represent you if you're hurt. And there's a lot of good ones, not just LGKG. There's a lot of good Beaver County attorneys in Western that have offices here in the local community.
Including your daughters now have their own private.
Yeah, they kind of branched off a little bit. Lauren, Erica, and Gianna Kelly. They have a lot of experience now. They don't need dad, even though they call me about 10 times a day. They don't need their father, sitting in the back seat of the car watching how they drive anymore. You know, Lauren's been practicing 13 years, Erica 11, Gianna 7. So they have a lot of experience. And, you know, my daughter Erica took a deposition in a med-mal case today, and I just sat back and smiled as she eviscerated this physician.
Oh, good word.
So, yes.
Let's talk about medical malpractice. You referenced that earlier, and I'm looking at the LGKG website. It talks about that as well. One of the pull downs, it talks about dangerous drugs. You handle dangerous drugs cases. What's an example of that?
You know, you got to be careful when you're taking drugs in over a long period of time, because they can have an adverse effect. And the physicians and the pharmacists who order these drugs need to pay attention to what effect they could have. You know, there was a case several years ago where a young girl was taking Haldol, which is a drug used for mental health issues. And the problem is, if you take it over a long period of time, you got to monitor it closely, because if you don't, you could develop a syndrome called tardive dyskinesia, which is a involuntary muscle movement. And it's terrible. And we end up making a claim in that case because the doctor wasn't paying attention and didn't monitor the dosages and such situations like that. And we're able to, this poor girl suffered greatly, but we were able to make a substantial recovery for her that secured her financial security for the rest of her life.
Well, more from Larry Kelly of the Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly & George law firm. Noah will be in 2 minutes with the news.
We are talking with Art Cornell from Beaver Cemetery. Art, I read a story recently about a local cemetery that had run out of funds and was struggling to pay for its upkeep. How did this happen?
Some cemeteries eventually become full and can no longer sell property and generate income. How will these cemeteries pay for their continued care? The cemetery may or may not have a fund for this purpose. In the story you mentioned, that cemetery is no longer selling property and its care fund is almost depleted. Now they're struggling to pay for the upkeep.
How can families be assured that their gravesites are protected now and in the future?
Beaver Cemetery exists to serve the public rather than make a profit. Our multi-million-dollar perpetual care fund is managed by a fiduciary to ensure that the care of the cemetery will be as it is today for hundreds of years.
Folks, you can learn more at beavercemetery.net.
It's hard to even put a title on what Tom Young at First Consultants in Beaver does. Calling him a financial planner or an insurance salesman or even a life coach still doesn't accurately describe the experience. That's because he brings dreams back to life or puts life back into retirement.
My job is to create in you the vision of the you that I think you can be, the place that I think you can get to. And you know what? I get frustrated because I see more greatness in people than they see in themselves. I see greater financial futures than they see in themselves. Most people don't believe they can get there.
Find out more by visiting firstconsultantsinc.com or engage in Tom Young's live simulcast presentation on the third Tuesday of each month beginning at 9:10 a.m. on Beaver County Radio and Facebook Live. All advisory services are offered through PL Wealth LLC. PL Wealth is a federally registered investment advisor. PL Wealth is in no way affiliated with First Consultants Inc., nor is First Consultants Inc. a registered investment advisor.
If you own a company or a small business, you might have considered advertising on radio. It's smart because radio is still the most far-reaching media outlet today. WBVP and WMBA can get you results. Get more information at beavercountyradio.com.
Beaver County Radio's news source. 99.3 FM, 1230 WBVP, and beavercountyradio.com. Here's Noah Haswell.
Good morning. On this Thursday, April the 16th of 2026, we will have a complete Beaver County radio weather forecast after we take this look at news. Land records show that a Texas-based company has paid $50 million to buy the Pittsburgh International Race Complex. The company shares a street address in Texas with Provident Data Centers, which is a developer that has been pursuing data center projects in Scranton and elsewhere in the United States. The wampum track closed on November 9th, 2025 after over 20 years in operation. According to the documents, the sale to Wampum I LLC was finalized in March. Wampum I LLC is an entity that is registered in Delaware. Senator Elder Vogel Jr. announced yesterday the approval of more than $740,000 in building opportunity through out-of-school time and violence intervention and prevention grants for 2 projects in the 47th Senatorial District. The Aliquippa School District was awarded $296,305 to launch Healthy Minds Club, which is a new after-school initiative serving approximately 180 elementary students in grades 1 through 6, and it was approved for a Boost grant. The program provides structured academic support alongside weekly physical and mental wellness activities. Community Health Challenge of Southwestern Pennsylvania, DBA Keystone Wellness Programs, was awarded $446,627 to expand the drug-free Aliquippa Youth Coalition, strengthen Aliquippa Impact's after-school and summer programs, and launch a new cross-age mentoring initiative connecting high school coalition leaders with elementary students. This project was approved for a VIP grant. State Representative Rob Matzey announced yesterday that new funding of $650,000 to the Southwest Corner Workforce Development Board will strengthen training and apprenticeship opportunities for Beaver County workers in the steel and construction industries. $350,000 will support the Southwest Corner Building and Construction Industry Partnership's efforts to upskill workers through registered apprenticeship programs and recruit workers from communities that are underrepresented in the construction trades. And $300,000 will support the Pennsylvania Steel Alliance Industry Partnership's efforts to upskill and reskill the existing steel workforce and do things like expand access to innovative training methods. Pennsylvania Attorney General Dave Sunday recently announced that a federal jury has returned a verdict against Live Nation Entertainment Incorporated and its wholly owned subsidiary Ticketmaster LLC regarding monopolistic practices that violated antitrust laws. Sunday and a coalition of states continue to pursue the lawsuit. In 2024, 40 attorneys general joined the federal agency in an antitrust lawsuit alleging that Live Nation, the owner and operator of numerous venues nationwide, including Pennsylvania and Ticketmaster, the ticketing service giant, form an illegal monopoly over the live entertainment industry. The jury found the companies liable on all monopolization counts and awarded damages to the states. The federal judge who oversaw the trial will determine remedies for the illegal conduct at a separate proceeding on a later date. And a man was taken into custody last night after police said shots were fired outside of the Neville Rollerdrome. According to Ohio Township Police, the incident started following an argument outside of the roller rink on Neville Island just before 9 p.m., and they believed it began with a gathering of adults with no ties to the immediate area. Police have expressed that there is no threat to the community.
Here's the Beaver County forecast.
Today it's going to be breezy, but we will see some sunshine. Along with the chance of showers and possible thunderstorms, we'll reach highs near 80 and drop down to lows of 58. And tomorrow, look for cloudy skies to start the day, but it'll gradually become sunny. Expect to see highs of 77 and lows in the upper 50s. I'm Lisa Marie with your Beaver County weather.
On this Thursday, April 16th of 2026 at 37 minutes after 9, we've got a temperature of 73 degrees currently in Beaver County with fair skies. That's a look at the news for now. I'm Noah Haswell on 99.3 FM, AM 1230 WBVP, 95.7 FM, and 1460 AM WMBA. Also streaming live around the world at beavercountyradio.com.
Thank you, Noah. Scott Tady here, joined in studio by Pennsylvania super lawyer Larry Kelly. How do you get the title super lawyer?
Well, it's a vote statewide of all the lawyers in Pennsylvania, and only the top 5% of lawyers are a lot of the designation PA super lawyer. I'm proud of that because it's a selection by my peers. I say all the time, Scott, the general public really doesn't know who the good lawyers are, but those who are in the arena with you do. So anytime that you receive a designation that is chosen and selected by your peers, it has more meaning. I've been very fortunate, at LGKG. I've been a super lawyer for over 20 years now, and I'm also been designated as one of the top 50 lawyers in Pittsburgh. Been AV rated by Martindale and Hubble, and Again, that's the highest rating you can get for legal ability and ethics. Again, it's a selection by your peers. You know, when I got into this profession, again, you know, it's like in your profession. You know, I think you're pretty good at what you do, but the real pros, those your peers in the profession really know who the pros are and the men and women that do it best. And when I started as a lawyer, Larry Kelly, all I was ever looking for was the respect of my peers, those people with whom I tried cases and against whom I've tried cases. I want their respect. I want them to say, win or lose, you know, Larry Kelly, he's a good lawyer. He was professional. He knew the law. He presented his case well. He was ethical. He was all of those things. And that's important to me because, again, the general public really doesn't know. You know, they may know after you've represented them. And again, I've represented families for generations at LGKG and Larry Kelly. One of them's listening today, my dear friend Johnny Earage. It's a family relationship that goes back 100 years. I've represented him, his wife, his mom and dad, his sister, and his brother. And again, they're good people. They like me a lot. But if I don't do a good job for them, they're not calling back. You represent the brother. If you don't do a good job, the sister isn't calling. So I'm proud of my reputation. I've worked hard for it. I protect it. And, you know, it means a lot to me to have those designations because I represent Larry Kelly. I represent LGKG. I represent Western Pennsylvania. You know, I've tried cases in, I think, 8 different counties in 3 or 4 different states. I don't want to go to another county, you know, when I'm a Western PA guy, a Beaver County guy, and have some judge up in Venango County say, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. You know, we have a reputation, the Beaver County Bar Association, and it's pretty darn good. And the lawyers here are serious men and women who do really great work. And so when I'm representing not only myself, Larry Kelly, my law firm, LGKG, but the lawyers in Beaver County in another state or another county, I want to make sure I do a good job so that that judge says, these guys know what they're doing.
LGKG with offices in Beaver Falls, Pittsburgh, Cranberry, Butler, and Lawrence County, joined by Larry Kelly. When we talk in the medical industry about a doctor's bedside manner and the importance of that, is there a similar thing with lawyer, your manner? Because sometimes people calling you, it's the first time they ever needed a lawyer in their life, and they don't know what to expect. It's a bad time in their life. They're looking for help.
Oh, wow. That is so right, Scott. You know, most of the people that come into my office, it's the first time they've ever been in a lawyer's office. And they have certain expectations, one of which that their lawyer not only cares about their case, but really cares about them as a person and their family. And, you know, look, I'm an old school guy. We talked about this last show. A lot of big box firms, let's go back to them. They don't see people in person. They interview and sign people up to be their client over the internet, in Zoom, in Teams meetings, and things like that. There's something missing there, Scott. You know, I want to be able to shake your hand. If it's a tragic situation, before you leave the room, I want to be able to give you a hug and say, hey, listen, Scott, I'm not going to let anything bad happen to you or your family. That's Larry Kelly. That's who I am. That's the way I operate. I can't imagine, I can't even think of a time I ever met a client for the first time over the internet. I can't. I mean, it might have happened, but if it did, I don't remember it. You know, I like to sit across the table from somebody, listen to them, kind of get a feel for who they are, but just as importantly, they need to get a feel for who I am, who Larry Kelly is, what makes me tick, you know, what's important to me. You know, why should you trust your case with LGKG and Larry Kelly? Why should you do that? You know, that's who I am. And I don't know. I'm not going to change, Scott. Not anytime soon. I'm too old, bro.
We don't want you to. And you can schedule a free consultation with Larry and LGKG on their website, lgkg.com, or calling the phone number 724-658-8534. So if someone calls you, you kind of walk them through what you expect from them. Are there certain, if it's a car accident, for instance, are there records they need to come up with, or any kind of proof of?
Yeah. Yeah, and that number is 724-658-8535. And what happens is you may talk initially to an intake person just to get some general information, but you're going to talk to a lawyer. You're going to talk to a lawyer. And normally in an automobile accident or a workers' comp case, we schedule an appointment immediately because I want to meet you. We may or may not be able to help you in your case, but I want to talk to you. I want you to be able to talk to me. I want to sit across the table from you. I want you to get a feel for who I am, and I want to get a feel for who you are. That's the way we do it at LGKG. That's the difference between us and the big box firms. And again, it's your choice. You always have a choice where you're going to go and who's going to represent you in these cases. You got that choice. And, I love it that way because, I see clients that I represented 30 years ago. When we see each other, it's a handshake, it's a hug. How you doing? How's your family? Boy, your little son, Johnny, he's got to be in college. Or is he working now? I love those conversations. But you only get to do that if you really know who your client is, what their family's all about. Yeah, it reminds me, hey, as you know, Scott, my avocation is coaching. And there are kids I coached 25 years ago, and when I see them and they come up to me and say, hey, Coach, how you doing? Man, that's as good as it gets for me. Because just like coaching a young player, you get to develop relationships. If you're a good lawyer, you not only represent a client, but you develop a relationship with them that hopefully it'll last a lifetime.
You're a basketball coach, baseball coach?
I did both.
Yeah.
I did both for probably more than 25 years now. Yeah, my first coaching experience was the fifth and sixth grade girls team at Holy Redeemer, Catholic basketball team, Catholic school in Elwood City. I wrote a book about it. I loved it, cutting down the nets, man. I don't know, and I've coached at every level, elementary, junior high, high school, college. I don't know that I ever had more fun than coaching the little girls at the fifth and sixth grade girls at Holy Redeemer. I loved it.
We always do throw a sports question your way when we do these. And NFL draft coming up. Any thoughts? What position you want the Steelers to pick?
It's one of two things. It's an offensive lineman, the guard from Penn State, Awani, I think is his name. Awani, I think is the way he pronounces it, or a wide receiver. It's got to be one. In the first and second round, you need one of each of those. No question about it. And then maybe grab a cornerback. Now, there's a lot of talk that they're interested in the quarterback from Penn State, Drew Aller. And listen, we have 3 third-round picks. If he's available in the third round, I wouldn't mind using one of those third-round picks on Drew Aller. Create some competition. Will Howard's a great quarterback. Mm-hmm. And there'll be some good competition because Will Howard's Ohio State and Drew Aller's Penn State. Because Aaron Rodgers, I think he's coming back, but this is his last year. We need to groom our next, hopefully, franchise quarterback. And competition is great. It brings out the best in everybody. Don't just hand a young quarterback the job. Make them earn it. And if you bring Drew Aller in and you have Will Howard, those two guys will be battling, and may the best man win somewhere down the road. So, I'm a Steeler fan, as you could tell. I spend way too much time on YouTube listening to Steeler draft prognostications.
There's no shortage of them. We were talking off mic too about the Pirates, and you're impressed with the early start. Long season, but so far, so good.
It starts and ends on the mound. And last night, Carmen Majinski, he pitched, I think, 6 shutout innings. Yeah. These are young guys. Braxton Ashcraft, he's had quality starts. You're going to get, Paul Skeens is the best pitcher in baseball. Forget about it. And Keller, he's a pro. He's going to give you a quality. Now, he didn't pitch very well the other day, but he's going to give you a quality start 4 out of every 5. And it starts and ends on the mound. Yeah. That's where baseball is all about pitching. And, Bubba Chandler, he's been a little wild, but kid throws at 102 miles an hour. So if the pitching holds up and it's a long season, I like our chances because the hitting is going to wax and wane. I mean, O'Neal Cruz, his OPS, on-base percentage and slugging percentage, is over 1,000. Brandon Lau is over 1,000. Ryan O'Hearn is about 950. That's not going to continue. You know, you got to look at the back of their baseball card. I think they're all good hitters, but they're not Mike Trout or they're not Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani. So that hitting's going to wane a little bit. It'll go back to the norm, but pitching's where it's at. Yeah, I like our pitching.
Great sports talk. Great legal advice from Larry Kelly from the LGKG, Luxembourg, Garbett, Kelly, and George law firm. Again, offices in Beaver Falls, Newcastle, Cranberry, Butler. I almost have them memorized in Pittsburgh. Did I get them all?
Yeah, we have them in Allegheny, Butler, Beaver, and Lawrence County.
Talk about the Beaver Falls office, because people...
Yeah, it's 1126 6th Avenue in Beaver Falls.
You've been there a while.
Very prime. Oh, man, 30 years. Yeah, we've been there a long time. Yeah, and again, we make it convenient for our Beaver Falls, Beaver County clients. You know, it's convenient for them to come down there. Now, all the work we do is generated out of our Lawrence County office, but you know, we have offices in Cranberry and Butler to make it convenient. In Allegheny County, we want to make it convenient for them.
Looking at some of the things LGKG covers as far as personal injury, bicycle accidents, ATV accidents, construction accidents, car accidents, of course, defective products, insurance bad faith. What is that?
Well, insurance companies, they're in the business of paying claims. No, that's not what they're in the business. Oh. They're in the business to collect your premiums, not pay your claims. And they have a duty of good faith and fair dealing. And sometimes they don't fulfill that duty. And when they don't, they are subject to bad faith. We had a case where I think there was a $15,000 offer. I thought it was grossly undervalued. The verdict was 6 figures. And, you know, did the insurance company fairly evaluate that claim? I don't think so. And in that case, the insurance adjuster called me and said, I bet you were surprised about that verdict. I said, I wasn't as surprised as you are. Call your attorney. I'm filing a bad faith claim. They end up paying a lot of money in that case. But that's an example of bad faith, where they don't fairly evaluate your case and make a one-and-done offer and then say, take it or leave it, and then you go to trial, as we do at LGKG. We try cases, and those insurance companies know it, and you get a verdict, and then now there's punitive damage potentially that could be there. So that's an example of a bad faith case.
My wife and I spent 10 months fighting a medical claim like that, the insurance, and it was a paperwork error on their part, and you know, thousands of dollars were at stake, and it gets so frustrating. You feel like you can't fight the big insurance company. You feel like you're out of your league with them.
You can. LGKG, they know our name, Scott. You understand? You say Larry Kelly, they know who I am.
I
right.
Like that.
They know who I am. So I've been doing it a long time. 42 years. Probably tried over 100 cases. I quit counting. Malpractice cases, I think over 25. I don't know. It's been a lot of them. And, those are all estimates, but I quit counting. But, we've seen the movie before. We know how they end. And, that's important. Because sometimes I'm going to tell you, Scott, look, the offer is fair. Your risk of going forward is greater than your risk of getting more if we go to trial. So I got to protect you too. I love trying cases, and I can stand there and beat my chest and say, let's go get them. However, I have to protect you. I mean, we turned down $5 million a couple months ago in a case because we think it has more value. I wouldn't say that if I didn't believe that. You understand? I wouldn't say it if I didn't believe it. My job is to protect you. We at LGKG and Larry Kelly, we've seen the movie. We're not clairvoyant. We can't tell you with absolute certainty what's going to happen if we go to trial. But through our experience and the analytics that we use, we got a pretty good feel about what's going to happen.
Another one, I'm sure, workers' compensation, that's got to be a big part of your practice. You've done a few of those.
A lot of people get hurt at work, and they may start paying you your comp benefits early on, and then you're still walking with a limp, and they want you to go back to work and be on your feet for 8 hours a day and lift 200-300 pounds. Because their doctor, who they paid $2,500, said, oh, he's fine, he can do it. No, when you're in a work comp case, if you call LGKG, what we do, Scott, we monitor your case. It doesn't cost you anything, zero, because we know sooner or later they're going to try to stop your benefits. And at LGKG, we want to make sure you don't sign something, say something, or fail to do something that's going to make it easier for them to stop your benefits.
Yeah, it's LGKG, the phone number for free consultation, 724-658-8535. The website, lgkg.com. I know you guys are on Facebook as well, and
yeah.
You're everywhere. You got to be.
Well, again, and the purpose of that is just to make sure the people that we've represented in the past know how to find us.
Right.
Got to make it easy. Nobody uses a phone book anymore, I think.
Do those still
I think
exist?
the last person to use a phone book was my mother, God rest her soul, and she had to use, the print was so small, she had to use a magnifying glass to see it. So, yeah, you got to know how to find our phone number. So it's Facebook, it's our website, it's amazing. Yeah, the world that we live in.
All right, Larry, give us a 2.5-minute summation. Why is LGKG the law firm people need to look at?
Because we're not a big box firm, Scott. We don't handle 1,000 cases. We know your name. When I see you on the street, I know who you are. That's the difference. And because we don't handle 1,000 cases, because we handpick our cases, we can give your case the attention it deserves. That's the difference between us and the big box firms, either from Pittsburgh or from Florida or from New York or from West Virginia. I want a guy that when I see him on the street, he knows my name. That's the difference. That's the LGKG difference.
I like your style. Always. Make sure we see you again next month. You take
Thanks,
care,
Scotty.
Larry.
You're
All
the best, buddy.
Need a new job? Apply at McDonald's. You could work anywhere from 3 hours up to 8-hour shifts. Whatever you choose. Get premium pay for premium hours like opening or closing shifts. They offer insurance, 401k, and more. Apply now at mchire.com. I'm loving it.
Character becomes a